What's up, team? Welcome to the Huddle. It's your weekly strategizing session on not only playing the game, but changing it. From mastering your craft to learning how to better display yourself in the industry, you're our type of people and you're where you belong. Welcome to the team. All right, I fumbled there a little bit. I almost got it, guys.
Hey, you'll
Almost
get it one
got
of
it,
these
bro.
days.
Almost got it.
All right, so with me as always, Mr. Daniel and Jose Gonzalez from Grand Rapids, Michigan, although only one of them is there today. Mr.
Yeah, the other
Jose's
the other
down
one
in
is
Dalton,
Georgia.
Georgia, representing from the
Jeff.
FCICA mid-year convention, I believe is what they call it.
Yep.
And we got Scott Banda from Floorcloud with us. So Scott, welcome aboard. Glad you could join us today.
Hey,
You
thanks.
are you are in the best possible episode for your product. So tell us a bit about you and Scott's with Floorcloud, and he's gonna give him a chance here to tell him a little bit about himself and what Floorcloud is.
Sure, Paul. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. This is a great opportunity, and we appreciate it. So, just a little bit about me and my business. I was the one that was nominated to be on camera, but Pat has another obligation. But um,
You
we
both are very
basically.
good-looking guys, so hey, we'll take either one of
I
you.
I don't know. I seen that email that said that he has a face for radio. So
That's great. So, both of us have been in the flooring industry for about 25 years. 16 of my years were at Bostic, where I was the director of marketing and business development for North America. And Pat Mullins' experience, he started a company by the name of CMP Cements. And they manufacture leveling underlayments to primers, moisture barrier coatings, patches, things like that. And we came together because at Bostic, we were looking to build out our product line of surface prep products. And they were a regional brand expanding west. And we liked a lot of their products. So we put together a deal and we acquired their company. So Pat and I got to know each other from that and worked there for a few years. And then realized that when we saw some of the sensor technology that was really coming on the market, we felt that we could put together a system that would help all types of contractors basically identify issues in real time that would help really save and headaches from installation related failures or redo and things like that. Not only just flooring, but all the other interior finish trades, trades that are frequently impacted by building controls if the climate conditions aren't really maintained in the proper range. So that's a little bit about me and how Floorcloud really was conceived.
Yeah, so that falls right in line with our topic of the day, project site conditions and their impact on profitability. So, I mean, we couldn't have a better guest.
right. I mean, we
Um,
talk about it all the time. Like I know in past podcasts we talk about showing up to a job and it's like concrete's too cold. There's moisture everywhere, and that's really what you guys are trying to put in front of everyone before you even get to the job site. So that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly, Daniel. I mean, Paul, do you want me to touch a little on how it works, or do you
well,
want?
let's do this. From the very beginning. Let's talk about how important it is that site conditions. Why does floor cloud or any of this matter? Like, what is so important about the site conditions, and how does it impact our profitability? So one of the things I'll just throw it out there is, as a commercial contractor myself, there's been plenty of times when the site conditions not only didn't match like specs, and this is where I want you to dig in and really tell us about how Floor Cloud does some of these product specific notifications. But
Okay.
um, not only was the job site not in condition for a certain product, it wasn't in condition in a lot of ways to even be doing any finish work whatsoever. We still run into that. We have a project at the moment. I can't list it or else my client will kick me in the old rear end. But at the end of the day, we have, plastic on covering the windows, and we got a 50-degree slab over here, and 20 feet away it's 78, and the humidity is different in every different area, and we're like, these are thermoplastic products.
Mm.
They're going to expand and retract. What's going to happen when you kick on the HVAC? What's going to happen when you do get this enclosed? One thing I can tell you is I don't know, but it's not going to be good. The manufacturers will give you some ideas of what's going to go bad, but what that does, though, if we send a crew out there, um, obviously it's wasting that crew's time, huge impact
Yep.
on profitability, and we're big on if we can make crews successful and make the crews profitable, then it's going to benefit the flooring contractor that uses them.
Yep.
So guarding the installer's profitability, and then we got to go out there then. So then now we're just taking the burden on, and it's our project manager, our installation manager, our people going out there to survey the site and look at it, right?
Yep.
So some of the stuff that we're talking about is like huge impacts on your profitability, and a lot of this gets brushed under the rug and overhead. But the fact is it shows up. And if you spend 4 hours with an executive level person out on your job site, if you pay them anything, you've lost 5, 6, $700. So, that's how I kind of look at the profitability impacts, and that's only talking about, you know, the temperature when I say site conditions, because this will go a little deeper than just the temperatures and things that you guys monitor. It's
Mhm.
also like the floor conditions and the substrate conditions and all of that stuff. So uh Scott, you have a very particular feature of Floorcloud that I love. And just to set this up, it's basically once the products for a project are uploaded, you don't only tell them if the project's out of spec for in a general term, you're telling them which
Right.
projects are out of spec
Yeah.
versus site conditions. Is that right? I
That
got
is my
that right?
favorite.
Yeah, that's totally right. So a big part of what we have, right? So we have the mobile and desktop software, we have the Floorcloud sensors, we tie into Wagner, the rapid RHL6s for concrete temperature and relative humidity, and then we have our database, and the database is a really powerful tool for us. The database is made up of over 18,000 products, and we're always adding products to it. Manufacturers are actually providing a lot of their data to us. But basically, that's where we keep the most critical specifications that the contractor needs, which are basically range, ambient relative humidity, a dew point, and then concrete slab relative humidity and temperature ranges. That stuff is really what is being measured or compared against every hour. So the way our stuff works is an ambient or even a Wagner as well. Every hour, we're comparing the site conditions against the manufacturer's specs of the products that you're working with. And there's no limit to that. It could be 100 products, it could be one product. And if things dip out of the spec range because building controls get turned off, GC, whether it's, heat or AC or too dry or too humid, you will get an alert, and it'll be specific to the product that's impacted, to the level of detail of what product, what section of the job, and the delta that it is off the manufacturer. Give you a sense. If it's only 2 degrees off, okay. If it's 10, 15, all right, we may want to get in touch with the manufacturer and get a little more guidance here or whatnot if we should proceed.
Yeah, so to bring that around for like the audience and our installers that kind of frequent our podcast, that means less trips to the job site where you find out you can't install. That's from
Yes.
an installer standpoint, that is your biggest thing. And for companies, I mean, saving time and your crew's efforts. I mean, you guys up in Michigan, I can only imagine you get projects ever so often that are of the size that this really matters. I mean,
I
am I
think
right or am I right?
I think we get we get more projects than not, especially during the colder months, where this is a very important piece to have. The Not only in the commercial, but also, if needed, maybe a residential aspect, and to some extent. But let's just stick with the commercial industry right now. Like, it would tell us so much, and to have a report, and I'm sure that we would catch on to what's trending on that project, whether or not we should even make a phone call or share information to say, I don't believe you guys are ready, and this is why. But not only that, is it gives us literature to submit with backing from the standards required for specific materials, for us to not only have an argument with the general or the site conditions period, but it has that data to back it up.
Yep.
And that is worth its weight in gold in some conversations, especially to let's just say the old school ones were like, no, we have a deadline, we need to meet it. And it's like, well, we can meet your deadline if we're not going to proceed, but if we were and it fails, what does that do for your client? What does that do for you? What does that
Yeah.
do for us?
So Scott, tell us a bit from your background. I mean, where you came from. What do
Yeah.
manufacturers, how do they approach this stuff if an installer or a company installs product outside of the correct project site conditions? What happens with failures?
Well, I think first of all, really from all and I'm working with more manufacturers now than ever. The manufacturers, of course, don't want to get involved in claims. It's litigious, it's expensive, claims investigation, and then the amount of, honestly, noise and meetings that go on behind the scenes at the corporate office, it's tremendous. And they really do, I believe, generally stick with their contractor and kind of come to the table. But they provide guidance for a reason. I mean, these products have, as the market creates more and more sustainable, sensitive products, this stuff's become more important than ever. They're gonna always defer to the published literature, but behind the scenes, what they come to the table with, it really depends, I'd say, on of the people involved, from what I've seen. In our system, and we're starting to get recommended by more and more manufacturers because they see it as a way to help people just be more productive, Paul, like you're talking about. I mean, it's the data that's objective and that can be presented to the stakeholders. You can provide it to the general contractor and you say, listen, based on these material specs, this site is not ready and we're going to be in jeopardy of having warranty problems. So you may want to take this, Mr. GC, and pass this to the owner who's pressing you. So you really help them have a more objective, even keeled, logical, professional meeting and conversation once the data is in front of them. And that's what we're seeing all over the place. And I will say there's what we've seen, again, we have about 130-ish clients around the US and Canada now saying the same thing, unrelated to one another. They're saying, this is the data that's allowing me to push back and get these site conditions to what they need to be. And
well, yeah, I mean, before, how would a company, and I'm a flooring contractor myself, like, how would we even go about producing something that is going to be sufficient from like, hey, we went out and looked and we take a picture of our fluke and it's like, and maybe a picture of the moisture reading, like it's kind of, I mean, it's first world problems because we didn't have these types of things, 15 years ago, but still there's a more efficient way. And it allows you to create a report and send it to your GC, and you can even add your GC to that particular project if you wanted, from my understanding.
That's 100% right. I mean, as to what you more or less alluded to, it's manual. With manual comes time running back and forth, potential errors, transcribing readings, and then a bit of the honor system. So, with our system and what you just said about putting the general contractor on it and then not. And it's a great way for the flooring contractor or any really sub to get close with their GC. is say, hey, this is technology we're using to monitor the site. We'll give you a seat, put you on the system. You can see everything I can see. And it really does strengthen the relationship between the sub and the GC, and everybody's sort of rearranged the schedule. If it's too cold in one area, they're not going to want to put down a rubber that, could be a $300,000 problem a month later.
What do you think, Daniel?
I think he's absolutely right. I think it's like, is it beneficial for us? Absolutely, but it's more beneficial for the GC because they're the ones that are, inevitably they're the ones that are going to have to come out of pocket if anything happens, right? I mean, we would like to think anyways, but I mean, for them to see everything that we see and in real time and say, hey, this isn't ready, and here's a link, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about instead of me having to do a report and then them coming back with, well, is this report accurate?
Yeah.
You're seeing exactly what I'm seeing at that exact moment, and that's absolutely beneficial for the industry. That's great technology right there, and
Yeah.
that
Daniel made a good point. I'm sorry,
it
go
just
ahead.
brings like we were on a project probably 10 years ago where it was in the middle of summer. There was, no HVAC, and they're trying to have us install this sheet vinyl, and the adhesive is not setting up. And it's just something like this would have been really, really beneficial 10 years ago when we were on that project. But, it wasn't around, but it is now. So that's where you can start implementing things and be ahead of, showing up on that job site and trying to explain to them that it's not ready.
That's right.
Yeah, so for the
And Daniel,
installers out there, like ask your company if they know about Floorcloud. If you're working for a shop, I mean, ask them if do they know about Floorcloud. Um, we can toss up the QR code probably here
Yep, I'm about to do
and
that right now.
QR it and send them there and have them look at it because it's not just a company benefit. This is really strives to reduce the amount of time that you're going out to the job site.
mm-hmm.
So I do have a bit of a pushback for you, Scott. So I'm going to throw you a curveball here. What do you say to the flooring companies and installers who say this is the GC's responsibility? Why are they not buying like, why are GCs not just adopting and putting your stuff in and then reporting to us?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I'll tell you the GCs we're approaching maybe 15, 16 GCs. And that's great. When we have the conversation with the GCs, it's interesting. They are usually thinking of millwork, drywall, wall coverings, and then they're kind of like, oh yeah, and flooring. But
damn, we always get walked on.
Yeah,
it's kind of
it's interesting. But what I would tell you is that the number one reason is the flooring contractor, the sub, wants to control the data themselves. So, that's proprietary. It's stored in your own job file in the cloud, and you own that data. So a year later, if there's a problem, you can go back and you can get that data and have control over it. That's what I would tell you is the number one reason. And there's been plenty of jobs. I was just on one in Boston yesterday. Two cloud contractors were on there, flooring contractors, and the GC had Floorcloud. So now there's a big property, so they're all doing different things. But I think there's a place for it to really coexist with the GC having it as well.
Well, that's a good point. A very good point. I would like to. So the quick and easy answer is you own the data, and if there's a problem later, you got something to go back to and say we
right.
were in conditions when we installed.
Yep.
And that's going to tie right into what Daniel had said too. And when it's the honor system, when we take our own reports and we have everything written in pictures, it is during the time that test was done, that particular temperature was taken. This avenue is a consistent reading, or constant
It's
reading.
a video, not a photograph.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. And
like it's not a part of time. It is time.
Yeah.
it's like I didn't Photoshop this picture that I took you guys of
Yeah.
this test right here. This date is real. Like my picture is timestamped, but this
Yep.
is timestamped way more often with less visits. It it really eliminates the
Yeah.
I don't want to say time that we've wasted going back and babysat projects,
Right.
but it gives you time back
Yeah.
to focus on other things.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you guys how people are most commonly using it. They use it early, put it on the site early to do kind of, Paul, what you were alluding to, and that appropriate to send the labor there, because there's nothing worse than sending labor and it's 40 degrees there and you can't do anything and then they have to be redeployed. That's a real cost. But the other thing, I was just at a couple different conferences. One was StarNet's Tech Summit, the other one was Fuse's conference, and a common theme at my booth is saying that, obviously the importance of acclimation of everything, essentially any of the resilient products or rubber products and hardwood products is critical. And, this is a great use to help you monitor acclimation too. Just putting material on site, and saying, yeah, it's going to be there for 2 weeks, so it's acclimated. There's no need for that risk. You can have a sensor in that room. You can see exactly for yourself if windows are getting opened or doors and whatnot, and respond to that. And then really, truly only install it when you know it's ready. That alone is becoming one of the most popular uses we have. And then, of course, during the installation. But then also, guys are leaving these sensors behind a couple weeks or even a month, just because flooring contractor could do a phenomenal job, the most intricate work, medallions, you name it, and be off the project. And then all you need is somebody else, the owner, to turn off the controls because they think it's all done. And then the flooring contractor's getting, brought to the table about, you don't know how to do an adhesive installation. You're like,
Yep.
really?
We've been there on a project not long ago.
Yeah, me too. Let's tell some war stories.
Man, I
And
think we've already talked about this project, but it was a church and they turned the HVAC off when no one was in there. And then it's not something that, then issues start happening and
Yeah.
you start getting all investigative and they try to blame it. Everyone is blaming someone else, but
Yeah.
essentially, once you start asking the right questions, things start coming to light and it's like, yeah, this is why. And
You start asking the right people.
Yeah.
yeah, and
You
it's
find you
just
find the
something that
mechanic.
right, and it sucks, right? Because you don't want to add to the problem and say it's going to cost this much more. It's like, how can we come together and all solve this
Yeah.
issue that happened? It's not. I don't want to be that person and say, nope, it's your guys' issue. It's like, what can we do to help at the same
Right.
time?
Right. Yep. Yep. And,
Yeah,
when,
I had a sports floor that did the same thing. They ended up it was an outbuilding with its own HVAC, and they turned that sucker down to 50 degrees when it
oh,
was not being used. So 5, 6 days in a row, it'd be down in the 50s, and then they wonder why they start having failure. Uh, we went back and took care of it one time, and then the second time I was like, I've got to charge you for this. You're gonna have to keep this within 7% of what your day-to-day temperature is. I tell them 7. I've heard up to 10% difference. So if you're going to be a 72, you can be down, 7 plus or minus a bit degrees from that. But you certainly can't go from 72 to 50 all the time and then crank it up to 72 when you have basketball games or whatever in there. I
yeah.
mean, it just, yeah, it destroys flooring. How often do have you heard, Scott, from your clients that they do leave it behind? And you said a couple of weeks. Is that fairly often they're doing that?
I'd say guys that are on it now that have been on it for a while are definitely doing that. And then we always we're trying to share as many examples of successes. Um, and once we start to do that, we need to do a better job of that. But once people start to hear that, they get it. Like your example of the cooling one, Northeast, Midwest, all these hot areas when they're getting schools ready, as you guys know, super tough timeline. Things are generally not that cool. They're uncontrolled, and then they slam on that HVAC, crank the AC, And the sites that have our sensors, basically, you'll get an alert right away. You might see some gapping where it starts, but you'll be alerted early on, and you can get in there and let somebody know that, hey, that stuff's supposed to be cooled, 1 degree a day for 7 days or whatever. I'm convinced, a lot of these mistakes are. There's a lot of materials. Not everybody knows the nuances behind it. But you're really kind of taking all those mistakes off the table if you keep this thing there for a couple weeks. We had a 110 unit condo complex out in LA. It was like 105 degrees out there. Same thing. This was LVP. They got in there, saved that. It was a massive Mondo job in Connecticut that we saved because the owner had turned off the controls, not the GC. The GC was sent the alert. They got in there over the weekend, turned it all back on, and I was told by that contract $1,000, argument. So though for the cost of having Floorcloud on there for a couple weeks or a month, it's peanuts compared to what it's saving.
Yeah, and you could be the hero.
And you can
I
be.
mean,
I got a question for you, Scott.
Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt you there, Paul, but do these sensors have the ability to measure negative, positive air pressure?
So they measure barometric pressure. Is that what you're referring to? So
Yeah.
primarily for locating the device. So they are GPS tracked within 30 feet. But then if you go vertical, we have the ability to look at barometric pressure, which tells you how far above sea level the unit is. So you can get a sense of what floor it might be on. I'm curious though, why do you?
The reason I was
ask?
asking is we do a lot of work in hospitals, and in hospitals, whenever we're creating dust, we have to create, or someone has to create a negative airspace, right?
Yeah.
So that way it's contained, and we're trusting that they've done that. And if they didn't, then if for some reason we create some dust, or if we're there for a long period of time, the residuals that are created can go all over the place. And I just didn't know if it was sensitive enough to know the difference between the negative and the positive air pressure that needs to be created based off of what the requirements for the hospitals that we're working in.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I've actually never heard that one. I've heard, do we have sensors to monitor air particles? So when you're doing hospital work and trying to adhere to all the HIPAA laws, you can have a sense of what might be coming through the curtains. But I'm actually going to talk to some of the technical team on the Verizon side about your question, and I'll let you know because that's a good one.
Awesome.
Okay.
So back on the topic here, obviously it's you kind of are the topic for this, but in void of Floorcloud, guys, you still need to, obviously site conditions are like, you got to do it the manual way. I mean, you got to get out there and make sure your site conditions are correct, because manufacturers, when you may have a great relationship with them, but not always. I mean, if you don't do a ton of forbo and then you do a forbo job and it fails, you're not gonna be buddy buddy with forbo or what have you. So the key here is kind of getting out to your job sites, checking in on it. Even installers, get with your company that you work with, or if you're doing a job on your own, making sure those site conditions, your ambient temperature, your obviously your moisture and your RH of your concrete, your dew points, those things are really valuable information for you to make sure that your flooring is going to perform. Now, on a part that Floorcloud can't solve for us, I don't think, guys, is substrate conditions past humidity and temperature. So
It doesn't tell you how much you have to sweep, how much you got to clean. It
or
doesn't
how
tell you
messed
that.
up the concrete is, or but when you're faced with those conditions, when you guys have get out to a job site, let me ask you it this way. You got a new project, it's a remodel, the substrate's going to have something, but we can't always assume when we're bidding jobs that every floor is just demolished and we're going to have to cap the concrete, we'd never get a project, right? So how do you guys go about that when you first, like, how early do you get out to your job, and look at the substrate and start, you know, having some considerations for floor prep or grinding or those kinds of things?
That's depending on the deadline, and how far out it is and how compressed our schedule is at the moment. You got to be out there at least 2 weeks prior to, so that way you have a little bit of time to adjust, especially when it's a prep issue. Um, we don't
I
always
love
have
it
that
when the
luxury.
GC tells me, like, hey, this floor is jacked up. You need to come look at it. But that just doesn't happen all the time. You know what
You're
I'm
right.
saying?
Unfortunately for us, we do know a lot of the generals, and they will tell us right away, hey, I know that half of this building is brand new construction, but the other half isn't. It didn't come together very well. We got a peak. We're probably going to have to level this side to bring it up, or grind, or we get the luxury of we get spoiled a little bit with the communication, but that's because we were very thorough in creating that relationship and expectations on our side. Um, but larger ones definitely got to get out there. I say 2 weeks. That's it's pretty standard, I believe.
Yeah, I try to get out there as early as possible. I figure we can't, you know, fight that battle too early. It would be
Yeah.
interesting, Scott. Do you guys ever plan on adding cameras to your sensors? So another big problem with flooring with us is we take up a huge amount of space. One of the reasons we're so disruptive on a job site
Yeah.
is like you can have a room packed full of stuff and still paint the wall.
Yep.
You can't have a room packed full of stuff and still put in the floor.
Right.
So
The floor,
a
they do the
lot of
floor.
times, I'm thinking of a project right now that we're doing where um, we're getting out there early. We're doing some floor prep and a little bit early, but you know, you get all the prep done, and your guys are getting ready. Go out there and start sanding floors and doing stuff, and you get there, and the room's absolutely packed full of stuff. Like
Yeah.
it just packed full of every other trade stuff,
Yeah.
right where you're supposed to start.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a future plan of adding a nice little camera to the outside so a guy like me goes out, sets a sensor,
Yeah.
monitoring my site conditions, and I can actually have eyes in the field?
Yeah. So that has come up a handful of times. It is a capability we could launch. There are sensors that we can connect right into what we've built. Our platform is really into all different sensors. Um, we're just kind of a little apprehensive to do that right now because we're worried about people feeling that it's a big brother thing, and are those sensors going to go missing because of that. We
Mm.
probably, Paul, as we're kind of bringing this first step of sensor technology to the market, the follow on, I think, as everybody kind of becomes socialized to what we're doing now, will be what you're saying, into probably more cameras, still shots originally, but of course videos capable as well. Just gets into be a big data hog and a lot of space in the cloud and all that. But I could see that coming out in a few
Yeah, I was
years.
just curious if you guys were thinking about that and if that had been brought up.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, just
I
getting a
gotta ask him
picture
that when I first met
every
him.
hour would be awesome addition, and what you guys already have is great, obviously, and serves a huge need. Just thinking in the future,
Yep.
as you guys mold your business and expand your service offerings, it's possible that getting a picture showing you your job site every once in a while,
Yep. Yep.
and I guess you know knowing installers, there'd be a few middle fingers on those pictures. I'm just guessing.
Probably a lot more than a little bit of middle fingers. Every
Yeah.
time someone walks past it, they'd be doing something.
Yeah.
No, I see it being
That's
valuable.
hilarious.
Guys have spoken about it for the same exact reason you said. We had a big customer in Texas actually ask us the same thing. They drive 6 hours to sites and only to run into the same thing you said.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, like Big Brother's watching, right? But I mean, at
Yeah.
this point, it's 2024. You kind of gotta think that someone is watching you all the time, anyways. So if
Yeah,
it's not that
yeah.
camera, there's another camera right around the corner that's going to be watching you. I've seen projects where they put cameras up and then they do a time lapse, and it's like I didn't even know any cameras were there. But you kind of
Hmm.
gotta just expect that these days.
Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
they got me picking my nose and my butt, and I'm not going to say what order.
That's disgusting.
I know.
All
I'm
right,
sorry.
so back on track here. So I got a question when you for you guys up there, just commercial flooring contractors in general, when you have had those conversations with your end user and the site condi or your contractor, whoever you're working for, and the site conditions are not up to par, and let's use the old way, pre floor cloud. How are those conversations? Like, um, are they, do your contractors or your end users, I see a difference between those two. So let's use GCs. Do you see them being receptive to what you say?
I think that we've been pretty lucky to have GCs that rely on us in order to tell them, kind of what the best thing is. But at the same time,
Mhm.
we've been on that other side where they're like, we don't care, just put it down. And it's a lot of pushback. And that's where, our buddy Paul Stewart gave us some tips on that about having, things signed off by not only the GC, but the owner and the architect.
Mm.
And then I think once you present that form right there, that's when they're kind of like, all right, let's maybe we should wait or do something about
Just
this so that way it's
just
right.
turn in the change order. Just turn in the change order. We'll get it taken care of. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Daniel's
Well,
right. To add to what Daniel said is if you're an installer out there and you are not doing your best or making your best effort to even track project information for yourself, um, do yourself a favor, get a notebook, take some pictures, and do it. Especially if something is out of line. If you're uncomfortable for an install, try to have some kind of information or literature that you are tracking yourself, because a photo with a timestamp, a concern, an email, a text message with some concerns could actually help you at the end of the day, especially when there's an argument or a case being created against you because of a potential failure or a failure.
yeah, and if
We
you're
Right.
we
if you're if you're on Go Carrera, you can take those pictures, toss them right in the chat,
yeah.
and put your concerns in the chat. Um, those types of things, those documentation, you documenting your project and the condition that it's in, or even things being in your way, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
I created Go Carrera to be transparent in many ways,
Yeah.
transparent into the installer's skill and ability, but transparent into the job site and what the installer has to go through, transparent on change orders. The key here is if you don't have Go Carrera and you ain't got Floorcloud, then you do what Jose was just talking about and document it yourself. Protect yourself. Make sure that you are, bringing your expertise to the table. I mean, that's what installers were here for, is to really say this is. I mean, the company should know. I get that, and I
Mhm.
challenged Scott, and he made a very good point on why GCs aren't the only ones using FloorCloud. The reason only flooring companies are not should not be responsible for tracking that is so you can protect yourself. If you track it on yourself, like Jose just said, and you're taking notes and pictures, um, in a big part, you're protecting yourself from a future issue. So, yeah, we always
Yeah.
talk about, I mean, it's almost every podcast it comes around to communication in some sort, and that's really what Floorcloud does in an automated way. It's what Go Career does in a very automated way. We just all have to participate in these new technologies and push them to your manufacturer, push them to your GCs, push them to
Mhm.
your flooring contractors that you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even think it's the pushing them. I think it's the educating them as to the benefit,
Yeah.
right? Pushing it to them is like you're trying to sell them on something. But I think this is something that is more beneficial than it is the dollars it can save, the dollars it will save, the dollars it has saved, like
Yeah.
as
Fair
a
point.
no-brainer, especially.
Yeah, I
Fair
mean,
point.
what we say is, the flooring contractors that adopt technology earlier definitely separate themselves from the competition, right? When they're going after certain projects and they're talking about using technology, whatever it is, they're a resource to their client, and they're looked at differently than other guys in the market. So we encourage people to really get out front, pitch the stuff, best of breed quality control, and all that, just to separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say one more thing for the installers is like there's nothing worse than doing this bang up craftsman style job, whether it's a bunch of circles in your sheet vinyl or like curves and just different stuff, and you're very proud of it, and then it fails because you got a bond failure because of site conditions. That that sucks all around. And so the one
That's a
way you
heartbreaker.
can, you know, protect yourself there is make sure your job site that you're well documented if you're you know being forced into installing outside of conditions. And the form that Daniel was talking about was just merely the sign off form for any flooring companies that are on here. It's very clear in the rulings across the United States on this matter. It's our job not only to alert them that they're installing outside of manufacturer specs, but you need to tell them all of the possibilities of what can happen due to doing that, and make sure that you're held harmless and indemnified from all things that could result from that, including safety issues that could result from peaking tiles and these things.
Yeah,
And then, like Daniel said, have your GC owner and uh, architect
Architect.
sign off on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like there was a project that we were on, this years ago, before Floor Cloud was on our radar, and I mean it didn't take much to monitor site conditions, right? But we'd physically have to be there. It's going to Home Depot or your box store and buying the thermostat that keeps track of the temperature and humidity. I mean, it's kind of cheap insurance, right? But still, that's something. That job site was an hour and 20 minutes away, so that's where the pictures came in too. Where every morning I'd make my rounds, take a photo of them. That way I have daily readings. But that's
Better than
only
nothing. I mean, floor clouds
better than nothing.
obviously
Yeah.
a far superior. And your sensors, I'm going to give you, as we close out here, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about the quality of your sensors, Scott, and what sets you apart from going down to Home Depot and doing that. You and I have had previous talks about that, so I want you to kind of touch on that, because one of the things, uh, you know, what Daniel was hitting on there is 100% true. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So
So,
tell us a bit about the sensors and what makes them so special.
okay. So these sensors are basically came out of two different use environments that we thought made great sense for our trade. Basically, they standards for accuracy as they were used during COVID on pallets of vaccines that were then shipped around in the cold chain logistics process. So there's a real tight tolerance around how that stuff has to be measured and recorded. I said earlier, there's a GPS tracking to it to within 30 feet. But they can be regarded as an asset tracker, and that's basically something that is being put on backhoes and bulldozers and heavy equipment on sites. It is so they can be in very rugged environments. They're IP67 rated. They can get wet, they can get dirty, dusty, whatnot. So they're very accurate yet very durable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's what sets them apart, guys. So give Floor Cloud some love. I see we've had a few clicks on the QR code already. Again, encourage your, educate, as Jose said. your companies that you may be working with. If you're an installer and in companies, it's like Scott said, it's pretty cheap insurance. So look forward to seeing your success, Scott, with Floorcloud and more job sites and just better project outcomes. That's really what we all want. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
there was Patrick was at, where were we at? The summit with NAFCT and
Yep.
Unite, and
Yep.
gave a presentation on it. And I actually just released a little short earlier today, and there will be a few more, just bits and pieces on your guys' software coming out on the social media. So we
Awesome.
definitely he definitely did a good job on that, and the video that you guys put together is great, and I'm looking forward to using your guys' stuff in the future on some projects.
Great. Well, we appreciate it.
Jonathan and Robert Varden both said that they got them in the schools, so it's not just for job sites either. It's anywhere that could be valuable. It doesn't have to be just job site specific. They want to make sure that the schools are staying within tolerance too, and that's huge.
Yeah, and those guys are starting to integrate it into a little bit of the curriculum. But yeah, we
There
want
you
to thank you
go.
guys. Just want to thank you guys for having us on. I think what you guys are doing for the industry is huge, and we're going to help spread the word too about the huddle and Go Carrera. So
Well, thank
awesome.
you. We appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Scott, Jose, Daniel, guys. It was another awesome episode. It was
Yep.
great
It,
chat with
it
you guys
was,
again.
and
And
Scott, when we end the live, don't get off. We always forget to tell people
Just
yeah, we
just a couple
do.
beforehand.
minutes.
All
okay, all
right.
right, I'll
Well,
stay on.
Huddle crew, Huddle team, until next Tuesday, you'll catch us on all the social channels. If you see us on any of those, give us a like, give us a subscribe, make a comment, tell us what we're doing great, what we're following, and give us some more topics to discuss. We love when you guys give us those topics from the audience because that helps us to, obviously aggregate and communicate better with what you guys are facing out in the field all the time and in your businesses. So from there, we'll catch you guys later. It was great having you, Scott, and thanks everybody for
Yeah.
your participation and
Thanks,
comments.
guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.